You can't just throw something out at teachers and say, have fun, bye. You need to have something backing it up to support them as well. Another piece that we did was we created an asynchronous online course for teachers called AI for Education. And it's 3 modules, completely online, completely free. They can log into anytime and take a peek at it. We built it on D12 Brightspace, which was a familiar platform for our teachers already. So there wasn't a lot of heavy lifting of how do I access this thing and where is it. It was in an area that they were familiar with. We also have something called the PL Hub, which is a website that was built by New Brunswick Education that is just a hosting website for all sorts of professional learning opportunities that are being offered around the province.
I have a slide in my presentation that I do on generative AI showing how various provinces are supporting AI. And at current, there are only 2 slides. There's one from British Columbia, and then there's one from New Brunswick. And today we talk with Sarah Rankin, who is essentially the driving force between the work that's happening in New Brunswick from the Department of Education in terms of supporting the conversation and the thoughtful and purposeful integration of generative AI. And it was a delight to talk to Sarah today, who comes at it from a teacher's lens and an arts education background. But really, again, if you follow her on LinkedIn and other places, really sharing thoughtful kind of ideas. And so many of us doing this work is not afraid to talk about the problems and wants those to be front and center. Lots of work around that, but also realizes some opportunities are there as well. So it's really interesting to dive deep into a little bit of the kind of the politics of it, if you will, how and why some provinces might be moving further ahead than others. And I'm trying to dive deep to try to, and she has no context really of other provinces, so you can't speak about that, but I have some. And so I try to get at the root of that. I don't know if we actually arrived at why. A little bit, I think we do understand why New Brunswick has been successful, but just a good conversation about all those things around generative AI. So if that's something you're curious about and want to know how it's being handled and supported at that level of the system, this is a great podcast for you. So enjoy my conversation today with Sarah Rankin. Sarah, I glance at your profile on LinkedIn and I see the many roles that you have played in your time in education. Lots of stuff with Minecraft and technology and classroom experience. Today, you are supporting educators all across the province of New Brunswick in your role with the ministry. So talk a little bit about how do you go from being a classroom teacher, like many people watching and listening to this have been, to working at the ministry?
Like, I think a lot of it has to do with just making sure that there's leadership around you that's willing to let you throw things at the wall and see what sticks. I'm not somebody that tends to be risk adverse when it comes to exploring technologies. And so that early adopter part of me definitely has made me explore technologies that were needed or needed to be approached immediately by the system. And the person who with the most experience or the most willing to give it a shot is the one that's going to rise through that. I never started my career intending to end up in educational technology by any stretch. When I started my education career, I was really more involved in the arts. My background was in theater and in performance. And when I started teaching, I thought that's really why I got hired, was because the school I was going into wanted a drama program. But then I ended up with a principal who just said, look, you seem to have a good handle on how to use some of the technology that's in your room. There's an old Lego Mindstorm kit in the shop down in the basement of the school. Do you mind like grabbing it and playing around with it and seeing if it might be something the kids want to use? And I was like, yeah, sure. So that was my first entryway into it. I had never coded, I didn't program before. I had taken courses during my degree, my ed degree, on technology in the classroom, but that was a whole new thing for me. And so that ended up leading into exploring tools like microbits and makey makeys. And then an opportunity came up within my district to become a technology coach. And I thought, you know what? That looks like an interesting endeavor. I'll take a shot at that. And I ended up getting the job. I did that for 4 years, and now I'm at the ministry, or in New Brunswick, we refer to it as the Department of Education. And yeah, so I've been here for just over a year now. And I would say, if you ever get those opportunities in your career to just try something that's
Mhm.
a little different, be it instructional coaching, be it administration, or working with your unions or anything like that, just take the opportunity, because you just never know what it's going to turn into. And you never know if you're going to find a passion for something that you never realized you had a passion for.
Interesting, your journey made me think of a couple things. Number one, as you were talking about, you haven't been risk averse. I feel that, and again, I'm generalizing so people can take it for what they want, that teachers in general are a little bit risk averse, right? Because you're number one, you have the responsibility and care for children, right? You're a parental locus, that idea, right? Like you are. So there's some heavy responsibility, and so there's challenges in taking risks. So I think that's one issue that most educators, I would say, are less risk averse. But the second thing that you mentioned, I think, which I don't know if you've thought of this before, but like your background in arts and theater, it's a risky role, right? Like you got to go out and do improv, and you got to, and probably there's times where like you probably fail, and you oh
Yeah,
that was terrible. Like
definitely.
you have those experiences of that was awful, but yet well, that's part of the journey. So I don't know if you ever thought about that those connections and how that kind of has helped you.
Yeah, there's definitely some connections there. I'm not unfamiliar with being in front of 1,000 people and suddenly realizing I've dropped a line, or I've forgotten
Right.
something, or I've messed up somehow. And you can't stop in the moment, because it's a show, it's live, it's going to
Right.
happen. Whether you have a choice, you can run off stage crying and everything kind of grinds to a halt and everybody around you is left stuck, or you just keep going and you work with the team and say, we're going to figure this out and somehow we're going to get back on the right page. And yeah, there's definitely a parallel there to how we sometimes roll with ed tech.
Yeah, yeah, and I think when you and the other thing you mentioned, sort of Lego Mindstorm, and you have that kind of is your entryway, if you will, into kind of all things ed tech. And I think for me, I'm a lot older than you are. It was a digital camera that the school now had a digital camera. What do we do with this? And I was like, I'll try that. And so I was the one that was playing around with it and exploring. And I never, the weird thing is, I didn't never actually thought of myself as techie as a kid. Like I didn't have Atari or any video games as a kid growing up, just wasn't a thing I was interested in. And it wasn't until I was in education and I thought this could be interesting, that kind of, and again, because not other people weren't willing to step up, that gave me that opportunity. And then, as you said, taking advantage of try this for a while, and nothing is permanent. But again, I think about the mindset of a teacher, which whether they think this or not, there is this notion of, okay, I become a classroom teacher and I do that for 30 years and or maybe become a principal if that's something. There's not, you don't think of yourself as jumping around to different things in education. So again, there's some mindsets there that aren't as common in others. I'd love just to, and again, you've only been with the department now for a year, you say, and so this could be a hard question for you, but I'm really curious because and we're going to get into the work you've been doing with AI too, specifically. But I, when you think about New Brunswick education, and your experience there, how do you describe it in what about other provinces in terms of here's what education, and it's a big question, so I don't know if there's just any kind of overarching themes or characteristics of New Brunswick education that you think are good descriptors.
I think, you think of how small New Brunswick is to start, right? We are one of the smaller provinces, and that actually lends itself to an agility that maybe a larger province wouldn't have. I have conversations weekly, if not daily, sometimes with people who lead technology within our school districts. I don't know if a very large province would have that ability to have that close a connection with those people that are directly on the ground working in technology with teachers and with students. And so that's a big advantage for us, that we're not so far removed from the classroom that we don't have an opportunity to truly understand and react appropriately when needs happen. New Brunswick is also very unique, obviously, because we are a bilingual province. And so that lends itself to an interesting model for education as well, where we are part of one department of education, one ministry, but that ministry is also divided in two, where we have an Anglophone sector, which is the one that I work in, and we have a Francophone sector as well. And they work on their own things. They have their own priorities and they create their own guidance on certain things. And we create our own for our region as well. And that's always an interesting way of tackling things as well. We're lucky though with the technology side of things that I have a colleague over on the francophone side, Anik Alcino, and she's amazing. And even though there is that division between anglophone versus francophone, I know I can connect with her in a heartbeat. So again, just going back to that idea of agility and being able to move quickly and address things that everybody needs
Mhm.
with the speed and efficiency and effectiveness that's needed.
So I'm comparing New Brunswick to Saskatchewan in the sense that they're both relatively small. So Saskatchewan is 1.1 million people. New Brunswick is less, a little bit less than that, but New Brunswick is also smaller geographically. So your ability to, and again, that I don't know how much that plays into it, given the fact that listen, we all have digital technology, so it doesn't matter if you live 8 hours away. You and I are thousands of kilometers away, and we're just connecting. It's like you're living next door. But I wonder how much that even plays into it. So you talk about this idea of agility, which I think is true. I'm comparing it just because as we get into the AI conversation, our ministry is amongst other, you're not the only ones, right? Or sorry, they're not the only ones who have not really done anything in this Gen AI space, which is people are craving some support and some direction and guidance from whomever. They're not doing it. So and again, I know you can't speak to Saskatchewan, but you can speak to, I don't know if if the geography helps you in some way as well, just the small, not just population, but the small physical size of the province.
I don't know if that, I don't know if it's a size issue, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was up in one of our districts on Friday, and it's about a 3 hour drive from where I live in the southern part of the province to get to this area that I was heading to go and check and see what they were up to and how things were going. But like you said, we also live in this world where video conferencing software is completely normal. And so for somebody to reach out and say, hey, do you have 5 minutes for me, no matter where they are in the province, they know they can connect with me. So I don't know that geography is a valid argument anymore for how fast you can move on the work.
Yeah. I do think though you did mention the fact that you have a colleague who's also supportive from on the francophone side, and I think it's that's where the agility happens in the sense that you happen to have people who are committed and interested in doing this work, whereas you have, if you don't have that same culture, people working in another jurisdiction, it may not happen, right? There are other priorities, right? So you don't have, as you would in a larger province where you have more people working towards that, so you can make sure that every area has at least somebody working in that. So
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of reasons why. I'm just curious. But that said, so right now, as of November 26, 2024, there are only two provinces, New Brunswick and British Columbia, who have, as from the Ministry Department of Education perspective, done any work in this area. I work fairly closely with the folks in British Columbia and the ministry. They've been involved in a lot of the work that we've done. I don't know, like how you can, like, why is that? Like, why are those the only ones? And again, not that you can speak for what other provinces are doing, but I guess even in your own work around that, are there challenges that might make you less apt to have done the work you've done? Are there, whether it's politics or expertise, whatever it is, any challenges that you can think of that you managed to overcome that you say, yeah, that might be one of the issues happening in other parts of Canada?
That's a good question. I mean, I will say this, it wasn't something that happened fast. It was something that when I started, there was already conversations happening around what are we going to do? How do we address this? And there was some early steps at finding resources to better inform our system on what that means. And that sort of really started from the top, where they
Hmm.
brought in Heidi Seawack, and she did a presentation for some of the leadership at the department. And that was facilitated by a couple of my colleagues. And then when I joined up, that sort of ended up in my portfolio because I had just finished my master's degree in educational technology, and my capstone research was about artificial intelligence in education. So I was arriving at the ministry with the research, the academic research, already done, and was able to run from that. That being said, it took us from really August of 2023 to August of 2024 to draft and revisit and go back to the drawing board, revisit again, consult, all the way until August when we actually officially launched them to our system. And a lot of that came down to having somebody who was dedicated to the project. It's I have a team around me. I have colleagues that are there that support, and we converse and we talk about this topic. But really, the drafting and the creation of the guidelines came to me. I was responsible for that final product. And I wonder if that can sometimes slow things down. Like, group discussion is great, but if we're stuck developing things just as a whole group, that can slow things down because you're constantly having to consult with this person and that person, this person, that person. Whereas if you can just have a point person who is the person leading the design, leading the project, who consults with this group and then comes back and does the work, consults with that group, goes back and does that work, things can move a little bit faster than having to constantly have biweekly meetings that
Yeah,
if you don't have meeting norms, they devolve into other topics or other
sure.
concerns. And oh, we got to go back to the drawing board and rethink about that. And we weren't coming up with a policy that was going to be hardline, do this, don't do this. They were simply recommended approaches. And I
Great.
think that allowed us some expediency as well, where we're not going to sit down and say, this is hard policy. We have to bring in the policy team and talk to finance and treasury about this. It was, let's look around, let's talk to the people that are on the ground, let's hear from them. And from those conversations and from the research and looking what other jurisdictions have bumped into, those who have gone before,
Yeah,
and say, you know what, these seem to be, for now, the recommended approaches to how this is going to roll out. Is this the hard line end of the story? No, definitely not. This is a document that's going to have to evolve and change as we go through. And already we're facing that right now. Last week we had an opportunity to meet with the Council of Elders of New Brunswick. So this is a group of people who are leaders within the Wabanaki Confederacy, the Mi'kmaq, the Wolastoqey, the Beskow people, and to hear their perspective on AI, that is something that we're going to incorporate into the document. And so there will have to be these times when we go back and we adjust and we revisit. So I think that's another benefit too, is knowing that these are living documents that even if you release it now, that
yeah,
doesn't mean that it's the be all and the end all. You're still going to have to keep working on them. So you could release them tomorrow and you're still going to have something that people can work with rather than having to wait years and years. Oh, we still have to consult with these people. We still have to consult with that people. Release something, get it out there, get the guidance in people's hands when they need it, with the understanding that this is an evolving technology. This is an emerging technology. Things will change in the next few months to
sure.
a year, and we're going to have to revisit this conversation frequently.
This episode is brought to you by Advanced Learning Partnerships, also known as ALP. We are a professional learning consulting group that serves communities across North America. We are partners, designers, and agents for change. You can learn more about the work we do at alplearn.com. And now back to the show. I obviously can't speak to other ministries and how they operate, but what I can speak to that you really nicely described is the process that has to happen in individual school boards. And that is somebody's got to own it. You've got to have essentially a project manager. And oftentimes, and the exciting and critical piece with generative AI is it does affect everybody. So it's not something that people are pretty savvy at saying, this is not an IT issue. Like, you don't give this to the director of IT and say, you lead it. That may be your project manager, sure, but it really is a much bigger question than that. So great, involve everybody, but at the same time, having somebody that actually is ensuring that things are getting done. That's been the difference in our work between districts that have been really successful in getting that stuff done, and those that are spinning their wheels because they want to have more discussion and conversation, which is important. That is a big part of it, but somebody does have to lead it. And then the second thing that you touch on too is the fact that people are wise enough to go, this is, as much as people want direction, policy is not a great way to go because of the challenges in, getting that. And then the fact that, okay, now how do we pivot really quickly when, oh crap, that thing we said last week, that's not a thing anymore. The world is, because it's changing so fast. How can you talk to, again, so you released this in, I think, about August 2023, because once you make the commitment to say, okay, we got to do this,
Mhm.
then the wheels are in motion, and how you get it done is one part of it. But it's the urgency and the conversations that happened before August 2023 that said, we need to do something. So I don't know if this again comes from your ability as a department to listen to what people are saying, or how do you determine this is what we need to do? Because this is what I'm trying to uncover, what is not happening in the provinces that is not getting them to the August 2023 moment that New Brunswick had.
Ah, goodness. I think the catalyst for doing the work was that's what teachers wanted. They were asking for it. They were begging and pleading. We need guidance. We need somebody who's going to, because we don't have the time as teachers to sit down and go and figure all this stuff out ourselves. Our administrators are busy. We have other crises that are happening in our schools. And this is just one more. We need somebody to take this on and figure out what we're going to do. And so listening to the teachers say that, that's what a ministry of education is there for in my mind. And it's what I'm there for in my job as a learning specialist, is to support teachers and ensure that they have a system that they feel they can work in successfully, that they feel supported, they feel listened to, they feel like there's somebody that they can lean on when something does go wrong or when they don't know what to do anymore. And so that was really the catalyst, was teachers asked for it. And so we did
Mm-hmm.
it. We created it. It took some time, obviously. It's not a rush job by any means. It took us about a year to really go from initial conversations to full on draft and full on product. And there were teacher consultations in there twice. There was consultations with district leadership, with our technicians, with people who work in other domains of curriculum and education. UDL is a really big piece of New Brunswick education. And so I worked a lot with a UDL specialist who works at our Department of Education, Heather Avery, and just having her insight on the how this is going to connect together UDL and AI was amazingly beneficial. So yeah, leaning on those people and saying it needs to be done. So we did it. It's as
No,
simple as that, really.
yeah, I
Like,
mean,
you want it,
that
you did
is a
it.
very simple but certainly powerful message that I think any teacher would love, and district would love to know that's how their ministry operates. So beyond just the guidelines, what else can school boards expect from the ministry in terms of, okay, so you've got the guidelines, which is a great start. Is that it?
Oh, no, there's a lot of other pieces that came along with it. You can't just throw something out at teachers and say, have fun, bye. You need to have something backing it up to support them as well. Another piece that we did was we created an asynchronous online course for teachers called AI for Education. And it's 3 modules, completely online, completely free. They can log into anytime and take a peek at it. We built it on D12 Brightspace, which was a familiar platform for our teachers already. So there wasn't a lot of heavy lifting of how do I access this thing and where is it. It was in an area that they were familiar with. We also have something called the PL Hub, which is a website that was built by New Brunswick Education that is just a hosting website for all sorts of professional learning opportunities that are being offered around the province. So the modules that we came up with were, first off, just an introduction to AI. What is it? What are the terms that you need to know around it? What's the common vocabulary that we want to share around this technology? The second one was about navigating ethical issues, privacy issues, because that's got to be first and foremost in everybody's mind when we're talking about AI is the privacy piece, the data security, the data privacy issues, not only for our teachers, but also for our students. And then finally, the last one was just about how to leverage the tools. Not necessarily what are the tools that are out there, because there's so
Sure.
many and they're all saying they're the next greatest solution and they're going to solve all your problems. And that may or may not be true. But looking at it more through the lens of here's a tool, how are you going to use it? How are you going to ensure that the way you're using AI in your classroom actually aligns with our curriculum, with the way we teach and learn in New Brunswick, that it connects with our holistic curriculum framework, that it aligns with the Wabanaki holistic framework, that it aligns with UDL, and making sure that it's not just I'm going to run out there and I'm going to put this in front of my students without thinking about it. There needs to be a thoughtful process of, is this the right tool for the job? Something that we also lean on as a framework for integrating technology in New Brunswick is the Triple E framework from Liz Cole.
Hmm.
That's a big one for us. How does the use of the technology enhance learning? How does it engage students? And how does it extend their learning beyond the four walls of a classroom? So, looking at it through all those lenses and trying to offer that as a tool for our teachers so that they can look at those guidelines and say, that's one thing, but how do I do this? This is where you go. You can go to this course and it's got some resources for you. We built an entire SharePoint site as well, just dedicated to AI that has tons. There's probably well over 200 resources on this site now that are everything from professional learning opportunities, videos for people to watch, activities, lesson ideas, all these things just collected and put into this one hub so they can find them easily. And there is the tool conversation as well. So if we're gonna do this, we need to have a tool that's approved, check marked by IT, by our information security officer and our privacy officers. That was a work that was really done in collaboration with the districts, because the districts are the ones that are really seeing what the teachers are using and want to use. So they came at us with a list of tools that they had heard teachers saying, I want to use this, or I've started using this and I think it's a good option. And then we would take that list, we took it to our DISO, and he gave it the various scores. And then they took those back to their respective districts to get approved by their superintendents or CEOs. Out of that, it's things like School AI, it was things like Magic School, Curapod, Codebreaker that really got the thumbs up. And now that has spun off into another project that we're going to get started, hopefully running at full tilt in the new year, which is we're going to be running a pilot project around artificial intelligence where we are going to be getting licenses to School AI for a small group of students and teachers. And the idea around that pilot is to collect some data around the impact that the tool might have on education. Is it decreasing the workload of the teacher? Is it having a positive impact on their efficiency? Is it having a positive impact on their
Right.
relationship to technology? And also on the student side, is this actually having an impact on achievement? Are the students learning, or is it just another tool? So I'm looking forward to that project as well, so that we're getting things into the hands of teachers, we're getting things into the hands of students that we feel we can trust and use.
That is so fantastic. Again, that is the work that I've been involved with at the local district level. Again, in British Columbia, Alberta, Ontario specifically, and looking into other provinces as well. But largely because that's not something that they're getting support for. And so districts are having to do all of those things on their own, which again, that's what I'm finding fascinating in terms of the role that a ministry or Department of Education plays and or doesn't play. Thank you for that enlightenment in that kind of journey. So I feel much more educated in terms of, oh, that's how that works. That's who's doing what. So very good. And again, congratulations. I think what you're doing is outstanding. And again, my role with Experience with British Columbia is similar in that there's a great relationship between those departments of education and school boards and school districts. That is not the case in every province. Because I hear them tell me it's not the case. Not because I know, other than they're saying, yeah, we don't really have any relationship with our ministry because they get in the way almost more than they support, which is unfortunate because, as you said before, you're listening to teachers, you're trying to respond to what they need. That's your job. And then the politics of the day obviously are in the way. I'm getting the sense from you, and again, I couldn't even tell you who the provincial government is in New Brunswick, so I don't know who it is. But
It's
my
brand
question
new. We
is,
just had an election, so we
okay,
have a
so
brand new
lots of new
government.
elections. So does that mean, is there a sense of, oh, how is the apple cart going to get turned upside down, or is it, yeah, we're left alone, like we're doing, our mandate is again to help teachers, and so whatever's happening in the world of politics outside of that doesn't really affect what we do. Is that the vibe you feel, or is
That's
it like, oh, we got to pay attention because they have a different mandate or lens on education?
I don't feel like there is that vastly different a mandate around education than there was previously. And we're very lucky that there is still continuity. We have a new Minister of Education, Claire Johnson, but below that, our deputy has not changed. Our assistant deputy has not changed. The directors of our branches have not changed. The people who are working there are still there. So that work is going to continue. It's just we have a new minister, and
Sure.
my my awareness around her is that she's very positive about technology and the role that it can play. So I don't foresee any apple cart tipping, which is great. I think if there was going to be, we would have heard something by now. But I also think too, if you're coming in and you can see that work's getting done and that it's being successful and this is what teachers wanted to begin with, then there's no sense in messing with a good thing.
Exactly. Let's hope that remains. So let me shift a little bit more, talk about you individually. When you look at your whole career, so could be your last little work with the ministry, it could be other times in your career. Okay, I'll frame it this way. They're making a documentary of Sarah Rankin, the highlight reel
I'm so
of
sorry for that company.
it's gonna be good. And you've got to highlight something in your career that you say, yeah, I'm really proud of that. What would you say? Yeah, this
Yeah.
was a proud moment in my career.
Besides the AI recommended approaches, I'm very proud of those. I'm very proud of
Yes.
the work that I've been able to accomplish just in a single year at the department. I think it's hard to think back on it because it went by so fast.
Mhm.
I do sometimes have to go back and look at my notes in my calendar and go, oh my gosh, you know what? There was a lot that I did in a year. I think the one piece though that really was the most transformative for me was my very first year as an instructional technology coach. I got hired on to be a technology coach in my former school district. And I started with them in September of 2019 as a technology coach. So the first few months of being a instructional technology coach in that district were great. Very interesting, learning lots. And then all of a sudden,
I know
everything
where this is going. I
everything
know the
kind of
next part of the
just
story.
stopped. Everything grinds to a halt, and we were
Right.
left going, oh no, what do we do? Well, because the pivot was to virtual learning and online learning environments, suddenly my team and myself had to become experts in all these things that were going to suddenly get leveraged. And really, there was about 2 weeks where we had to get super familiar with Microsoft Teams, get super familiar with these tools that teachers were going to be using to do lessons. So things like Smart Lumio and how to make an assignment in Teams, how to communicate online, how to host a meeting online, and what are some of the other tools that are out there. And that was like educational technology boot camp. You have to become the expert in all of these things in 2 weeks. How do you do that? And as a team, we put our heads together, and as a province, we pulled together as well. That I think that is another testament to it, is that it wasn't just our districts saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. We held weekly meetings across the province with all of the technology coordinators and all their technology coaches and basically anybody that was going to be hoping to get people moving forward and get education happening when we're all stuck at home. That really unified us as a province and unified that digital learning culture in New Brunswick, that we all saw a need. We all jumped in and said, we've got to do something. Let's just figure this out together. And yeah, we made it through the woods, and were there definitely some battle scars that we're coming out with and things that we're going to have to figure out the long-term impact of? Definitely. But we made it through, and we built a culture out of that, I think, in New Brunswick, of trusting technology leaders to support and help the system, because that's what we did. They saw us support and help them for a year or two as they navigated online learning and then hybrid learning. There was a relationship formed, there was a trust formed, that we're there, and if something happens, we're going to catch you when you fall down, and we're going to build you back up, and we'll stand beside you, making sure that it gets back on track.
You've already painted quite a extensive and really beautiful picture of the province of New Brunswick and the way that things operate there. And so, thank you for all those sharing, and thank you for sharing that challenge that you faced. And one more question, then we'll hit the home stretch here. I want you to name somebody you're grateful for in education. And people sometimes hate this question because it's like, you're pinpointing. I got like a billion people. Yeah, I get it. There's a million people. If you're in it at all, a thinking, caring person, that list would be very long of all the people that have helped you along the way. But today, I just want you to think of one. And it could be maybe somebody that maybe other people might not think of. I would love it if this person could be somebody who might actually listen to this podcast and hear their name, because everybody likes to hear their name mentioned
Yeah.
in this
Oh my
context.
goodness. There's a lot. There's a lot of people that I owe a lot of this to. I think if I was to think somebody who is a coworker, a colleague, somebody who is right there with me, I'm gonna go with the fella who actually hired me to become a technology coach, and that's Darren White. So Darren is the technology and skilled trades coordinator for the Southern District here in New Brunswick, where I got started as a tech coach. And it's funny because now he's a friend, he's a colleague. Working from that ministry standpoint, I meet with him fairly frequently, but he took a, I knew he was taking a bit of a chance with me, because he could have picked somebody who was teaching technology, who was a tech teacher, maybe somebody who was teaching computer science or something like that. Instead, he ended up picking a grade 5 French teacher who just liked to tinker around with things like 3D printers and microbits and Lego. And I remember him telling me a story that when he hired me, there was really two candidates that it came down to, myself and somebody else. And he said, uh, one of these people was very quiet, very soft spoken, and the other one was you. And he said, I had to worry at first, like, is she going to terrify these teachers? Is she going to come in with this big personality and like frighten people away? And he said, I have never once regretted that decision. So I would give big credits to Darren White for taking a chance on me, and really a job that has really defined my career path for the last 6 or so years. If I was to think outside of New Brunswick a little bit, and this is going to be a strange one. I don't know if she'll hear this or not, but I'm going to give a shout out to Karen Philhart. So, Karen is a teacher. She's from the States. And I've never, ever, I don't think, face to face met Karen, but I connected with her when I attended my first ISTE conference virtually, where everybody was just in their little chat rooms chatting with each other and everything. And I can't remember how it was, but we ended up DMing each other. And she was telling me all these incredible things that she was working on. And I was introducing myself like I'm brand new to this whole ed tech world. This is, and she was like, you need to connect with this. And she was showing me her Windows Ugly Sweater collection. And just knowing that this ed tech world is so large and vast, and that there are these amazing people in it who, no matter what their extensive experience might be, are more than happy to sit down with somebody who's brand new, who's a nobody, and offer to share their insights and their knowledge with them. So those would be the two people that I would give big shout outs to.
No, that's awesome. And I think when you mention somebody giving a chance on you and describing and seeing you as you're not maybe the same as other people, you have a different skill set, and which can sometimes be like, I don't know if that's what you want. Like the fact that you weren't timid, you weren't shy. Those aren't always, not everybody wants that. So the fact that somebody called it out and said, no, these are the traits that we're looking for, and you are the person that can do this. There's something amazingly empowering. So having people in your life that acknowledge you, especially when I'm not necessarily a theater person. My daughters are all big theater persons. So musical theater is like a big part of our world. And I get that is just, you're a little different. I'm just telling you right now, Sarah, you're a little different. You know you are, right? As
You've
that's what
been
makes,
called different before, but it's sometimes it's not always
maybe not in a positive. No,
positive.
I mean that as, and listen, I guess that you could say everybody's different, but the fact that I might not be the typical person you're thinking for when it comes to instructional technology, but the fact that somebody said, actually, you are, is got to be something that gives you a tremendous amount of confidence and then continues to allow you to do the things that you've been able to done. So what a great call out. And I think the way you describe that, I think is so important for people to know, like we should do that for other people too. Like, how do we find those other people that say, this is somebody that has a talent or a trait that should be highlighted and given opportunities?
Just look for the people who want to help. That's the key. That is really and truly the key to this. It doesn't matter how much experience they've got or where they're coming from or how big of a network they have. Look for the people who want to help. Those are the people that are really going to get the work done because it doesn't matter how much they know, they'll learn what they need to know and share it. They may not have they'll work on themselves to build a better system for everybody
Right.
around themselves.
So last few questions here. Let's hit the home stretch here. So what are you reading or listening to from a professional perspective?
From a professional perspective, honestly, when it comes to things that I tend to read or listen to, they tend to be stuff that are not related to my work because I use them to decompress. But oh goodness, what was the one that I was reading recently? Oh, The AI Classroom by Dan Fitzpatrick, I think is the last name. Yeah, Fitzpatrick. So that one was a really good book that I leveraged when I had a bunch of PL opportunities coming on and I was looking for, I just needed a framework of how to get through from point A to point B. And I found that one was a big help. For my own sort of like entertainment right now, I'm reading Stephen King's novel, So You Like It Darker, which is a bunch of short stories. And as far as listening, my go to podcasts tend to be true crime. So I listen to a lot of Canadian true crime. Christy Lee, if you ever hear this, I'm a huge fan. And then the other one is Pod Save America because I'm such a nerd for the political drama. And give me the
Right.
West Wing any day, and I'll be thrilled. This one's a real live West Wing. So those are the things that I'm leaning on right now as far as listening and reading.
It's a good mix. It's a good mix. What about viewing? Do you have any like guilty pleasure
Oh my God, yes.
binge watches that you go for? Okay, listen, you're a theater person. I know you do. So just tell me what they are.
Oh my goodness. What am I watching right now? I am sadly watching the last seasons of What We Do in the Shadows and Star Trek Lower Decks. I'm devastated that both of those series are coming to an end, but hopefully it'll be a good send out with a bang. I just started watching the new Dune TV series, Dune Prophecy. That one's intense. And then I'm revisiting a classic TV show from my youth and I'm introducing my husband to it. It's called Daria. It was a spinoff from Beavis and Butthead, a very jaded teenager.
Yes.
Reminds me of
Okay.
myself when I was in high school. A little bit nihilist, a little bit jaded. So that's really what I'm watching right now.
Lovely. Yeah, that's awesome. We need both all those things in our life to toggle between hard thinking and just mindless entertainment. We need that too.
Yeah.
So where are you in New Brunswick? Are you in
I
St.
am
John?
in the lovely city of St. John.
Okay. And not to be confused with St. John's.
Not to be confused with
S.
St.
I,
John's, Newfoundland. There is
yes.
no apostrophe S on my city.
So I have been to St. John a couple times. Lovely city. So lots of classic, the Algonquin Resort, and all kinds of really cool things. I remember one time I was told to go watch where the river does its thing, where it spins or
River
does it.
Falls.
Yeah. So I
Yep.
did that. But besides those, what would be like, and your downtown is quite cool, has got some neat stuff in there, but what's like maybe a hidden gem or something that people should check out when they're there beyond the ones that are going to be obvious when they do their Google search?
Yeah. Yeah. So the core of St. John, the sort of commercial center, that's actually where I live. I'm about a 5 minute walk from what we call Uptown St. John. We're a bit weird like that. Our downtown is called our Uptown. And so, yeah, just even to go through that area is a wonderful little experience. The city market is there. There's lots of great restaurants, and the bar scenes is very interesting. We now have a shipping container village that's open for a lot of parts of the year that the cruise ships come in through, and that area has really started to expand and grow. But if I was to think, what are the places that nobody seems to go that are really amazing places to explore? I would say they're going to be areas that may not be right in the city. You'd have to go a little bit outside of the city. So I think of down in St. Martin's, which is this lovely little village. It's about a half hour's drive from St. John. Absolutely wonderful fishing village. If you're looking for quintessential East Coast fishing village, St. Martin's. And there's a great parkway that you can drive through there and you can see the coastline. It's absolutely gorgeous. If you want to stay in the city, though, there is a brew pub that I absolutely adore called Big Tide. You can find me there minimum once a week for trivia night. That's where I'm heading this evening. And
Nice.
it's a great spot. I think of it like Cheers, or if you've ever watched Shaun of the Dead, they talk about the pub. They're going to the pub. That's my pub. It's where I go, and I know that I know the staff there, and I know that I'm going to probably end up stumbling into somebody there that I know really well and catch up with them. And it's a good little spot. It feels very warm and homey there.
Nice. You're making me desire to come back at some point. So hopefully
Oh
that
yeah.
that
Let me know
and
when
then
you're on your way. I'll give you a
we can
tour.
go to the pub. We
Yeah,
can
we'll
we
go
can
pub.
hang out there. Yeah. Sarah, this has been a delight to get to know you. Again, this is lots of the guests that I have on the show are people that I've known for years. And so we catch up. You and I don't have that relationship. And I simply from following your journey and what's happening, what you've been leading in the province has made me intrigued to want to know more about you. And it's great. And I will leave you with this compliment. So I don't know if Seth Godin, the author, talks about people who ship and he calls them shippers. And essentially that means like you got it, like it's great to have ideas, but you like, it only matters if you ship your product, if you ship it. And you are a shipper. You get things done. You don't just talk the talk. You actually have accomplished a lot in a very short time, both your story as an instructional coach, but now working at the Department of Education with all the great things you've done in AI. So thank you for leading that. Thank you for really setting a high standard for others to follow. And this won't be the last time you and I chat and connect. I can tell you that. So
Oh,
thank you
thank
very
you. I
much.
appreciate that.